So today I want to go over how to fill in the unit circle, all right? And what we want to do when we fill in the unit circle is we want to remember that this is a circle with a radius of 1 in the xy plane. So we know this is the positive x-axis, the positive y-axis, this is the negative x-axis, and the negative y-axis is down here. This circle has a radius of 1. So if we measure out 1 unit from the origin here, this is 0.10, 0.01, 0.10, and 0.0, -1. Now we want to know what the points all along the circle are. So every other point on the unit circle is going to be a number over 2. So this will be like this. And in the first quadrant, which is where we are here, we can see that x and y are both positive. So everything's positive, but all the numbers are going to be over 2. So what you want to do within each quadrant is you want to pick a 0 and walk to 1. So this 0 is in the y coordinate, so I'm going to fill in the numerators of the y's as I get toward 1. And it's square root of 1, square root of 2, square root of 3. Then you pick the other 0 and head toward that 1. 1, square root of 2, square root of 3. If we go to quadrant 2, it's the same pattern, except now the x-coordinate is negative. And same idea. I'm going to pick this 0 and walk to 1. Square root of 1, square root of 2, square root of 3. Square root of 1, square root of 2, square root of 3. In the third quadrant, both x and y are negative. So same idea. I'm going to pick this 0. It's in the x direction. So I'm going to walk toward this 1. So 1, square root of 2, square root of 3. 1, square root of 2, square root of 3. In the fourth quadrant, x is positive, but y is negative. So 0, square root of 1, square root of 2, square root of 3. 1, square root of 2, square root of 3. So now we have all of the points filled in, and you can see that square root of 2 over square root of 2 always goes together. 1/2 and square root of 3 over 2 always line up together, and 0 and 1 will always be paired up together. To do the angles in the first quadrant, well, we know that this is 0 degrees, and the first quadrant it's 30, 45, 60, and 90. So the pattern is 30 plus 15 plus 15 plus 30. So we're just going to follow that all the way around. So plus 30 is 120, 115 is 135, plus another 15 is 150, plus 30 is 180. Plus 30 is 210, plus 15 is 225, plus 15 is 240, plus 30 is 270, plus 30 is 300, 315, 330, and 360. So now we've made one trip completely around the circle. To do the radian measures, we want to fill the first quadrant in first, and then we want to cleverly count. So we know that 90 degrees is pi over 2 radians, and we know that 0 degrees is 0 radians. And in the first quadrant, it's pretty nice, it just counts. Pi over 2, pi over 3, pi over 4. Nope, there is no pi over 5, it's pi over 6. And now you're back to 0. Okay? To fill in the rest of the angles, well, you just want to cleverly count around the circle. So we know that this is 90 degrees, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4 quarters to the circle. So 1 pi over 2, 2 pi over 2. 2 pi over 2 simplifies to pi. 3 pi over 2. And then we're back up at 4 pi over 2, which simplifies into 2 pi. Now let's do the 45-degree angles. So we'll have 1, 2, there'll be 8 of those. So 1 pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, which is pi over 2, 3 pi over 4, which is here, 4 pi over 4, which is pi, 5 pi over 4, 6 pi over 4, which is 3 pi over 2, 7 pi over 4, 8 pi over 4, which is 2 pi. And so you can see as we're doing this, we're overlapping our previous paths, and you can check that you're doing these counts right because the numbers that you overlap should match up, right? The last one is 30 degrees. So we know this is 30, this is 30, and this is 30. So each one of these quadrants is broken up into 3 groups of 30. So there will be 12 of those as we count around. So 30 is pi over 6. So we'll count in units of pi over 6. 1 pi over 6, 2 pi over 6 is pi over 3, 3 pi over 6 is pi over 2, 4 pi over 6 is 2 pi over 3, 5 pi over 6, 6 pi over 6, which is pi, 7 pi over 6, 8 pi over 6, which is 4 pi over 3, 9 pi over 6, which is 3 pi over 2, 10 pi over 6, which is 5 pi over 2, over 3, excuse me, 11 pi over 6, and 12 pi over 6, which is 2 pi. And there you go. You filled in the whole unit circle. If you want to label the quadrants, we count in order around in the same order. This is quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4, and we know that every point on this unit circle represents cosine of our angle, and every y-coordinate on this point represents sine of that angle. And so we can see in quadrant 1, everything is positive. In quadrant 2, cosine's negative, but sine will be positive. In quadrant 3, they're both negative. And in quadrant 4, cosine is positive and sine is negative. So the signs of cosine and sine will simply match the coordinates of x and y accordingly. So I hope this was helpful, and if you practice filling this in, it's quite useful, and you can usually sketch it pretty quickly if you need it on an exam or on scratch paper.